Let's call October 18th Personnel Committee meeting to order. Dana, could you take roll call, please?
Alderman Barber.
Here.
Alderman Mayer is not yet here. Alderman Holfer.
Here.
Carol Brenner. Here. Dale Weichel.
Here.
Tom Trainer.
Here.
Joel Pesh, as most of you have already heard, has resigned from Budney.
Here.
Frank Fresco.
Here.
Please stand for budget. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, and for all.
Okay, as you've heard, Joel Pesh is moving to Muskego and has resigned. So we'll be getting somebody new. We have a new alderman,
Holfer.
He's been around for a long time, and as you know, he's taken over as alderman until election, whenever that is.
April.
Okay. So we'd like to welcome him. Next is citizen comment period. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, Brad Pulaski. I'm on the fire department. I'm also the union president for the fire department. One thing I just want to talk about with us going through the recent biometrics and that for the insurance to help offset the costs for the plans designed for that with the price difference. For whatever type of designs you're doing down the road, the biometrics and uploading, it's been very challenging for a lot of our members. Was not the easiest for them. I know my wife, she said it just actually scheduling and going about getting that going. That was a little difficult for her to go through that route. I wasn't with her when she was trying to go onto the app or onto the NICE program, or whatever it was for her scheduling, but she said that wasn't the easiest. She said after that it wasn't that bad, but just scheduling wasn't the easiest for her. But I know on our end with getting the results and uploading it, I know I had problems getting on the 365 website. I was able to get on through upload it on a computer. For whatever reason, I kept getting kicked off. There were some logging in issues. A couple other members had issues with that as well. So something to think of down the road. I'm sure if it's happening at the firehouse, I'm sure other employees are also having issues with this as well. I mean, everyone appreciates the biometric process of how we had to upload this year and some of the extra stuff on our end, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments period? Hearing none, close citizen comment period. Move on to item 4, approval of minutes from September 27th, 2021.
Second.
Is there any further questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, 2022 benefit changes, approval of stop loss life LTD and Cobra vendors and coverage and health insurance plan design options. Peggy?
Sure. In front of you, you have a personnel committee action sheet that has some discussions, as well as a couple of big 11 by 17 sheets that show some of the results of the bidding. The first one, stop loss coverage. If you recall, at the last meeting we discussed, there was a 14% increase with our current provider for stop loss. We didn't think that on that. We did have 5 firm quotes received, and you see those listed on your 11 by 17 documents. Don't be misled. Under the fixed costs and then the titles, that's the third-party administrator. You have to go down to the first red line to tell who the provider is. R as the header, and then Symetra as the stop loss provider. That provider offered a $45,000 reduction compared to what we're paying now. That was in comparison to a 14% increase on $131,000. So quite a large difference on that. Symetra actually worked with them in the past, and the consultants work with them on a regular basis. There is the potential to receive an experience-rated rebate offer, just depending on what our usage is in the next year. However, the way that works with all stop-loss providers is if you have good experience in 1 year and you go through the formula, if you have good experience in 1 year and you go through the formula, you don't get it till the next year, and you only get it if you're still with that provider in the next year. So with this transition to Symetra, we will be foregoing Sun Life's approximately $60,000 rebate. Sun Life's approximately $60,000 rebate in 22. However, Symetra's $45,000 savings is after the $60,000 has already been taken out. So before that, it was well over $100,000. The good was well over $100,000. The good. So we are there's no new lasers for the next year. 50% rate cap guarantee. The rate cap guarantee is 5% higher than it is with Sun Life. But with the rates, we're in a good spot. We do have notorious for only allowing their quotes to be good for a certain amount of time because how things happen. So that is something we're looking at for 2022. Is there any questions on that piece?
I have one. Given the difference in price, is there any trade-offs or things you're losing?
In fact, their experience-rated rebate offer with Symetra is better than the one our current provider of Sun Life. So it's a net savings of $45,000 over the best option you could get from Sun Life, including that rebate offer. The next item is life and long-term disability. Again, the reason we went out to bid on those is because the Sun Life renewals, the life insurance under Sun Life was a 0%, was a 39% increase. Again, not something we thought was appropriate, so we went out to bid. You do see all of those. Now you see 3 sheets attached, and this is a decision that I wanted to make sure I talked to you about. So Prudential overall, I'm on the attachment B. So the first column is the current, Sun Life's current. Sun Life's renewal did get better, down to 19%. However, when you look at Prudential, which is the next one, it's a savings of $82,000. I'm sorry, it's a savings of $37,000 or 31%. Now, the reason this is $37,000 or 31%. Now, the reason this is a bit tricky is because Hartford, the second best provider, actually has a lower rate for the, if you separate them out, life and long-term disability, the employees pay 100% for life and long-term disability. The employees pay 100% for life. For long-term disability, the city pays 100% for life. So the committee could look at that and say no, instead of saving the $37,000, take a $6,000 hit. I didn't think it was appropriate. We're trying to work with employees and tell them that, you know, we're working towards all of these common goals. And when the city could say, collectively, when we could all save $6,239, I wasn't, the city should save it all on its end. Again, it's that total package with recruitment and retention. I certainly appreciate the committee's feedback on that, but we're trying to build a culture with our employees, and I think going for the best coverage with the best rates overall would be the appropriate thing. In addition, Prudential does have a, and now I'm on the very last 11 by 17. There's 2 categories in the middle of the page. One is called mental/nervous. One is called alcohol and drug abuse. Industry standard in this area is 24-month limitation. However, Prudential's is 24 months per occurrence. So an employee could get repetitive services if needed over that time. So that's the difference in really the 2 programs. So that would be the most notable one. Both of them are a 3-year rate lock. Both of them handle the coverages appropriately. Like I said, it's the net savings, and my recommendation is the savings overall, not just. Any questions on that one?
Is there any, it looks like, Sun Life, been with Sun Life. Is there any, it looks like, Sun Life, been with Sun Life for quite a while. Any reason why they've increased rates so much, both?
We have our consultants here. Do either of you have a comment on that?
Two things: experience, and then the manual rates, which are based on demographics. So those two combined things are what drove the higher than normal.
There's no additional questions on that. The last one is transitioning to a new Cobra administrator currently insurance plans. It's typical to have your third-party administrator manage that. Last month, we talked about the transition to UMR as our new third-party administrator. It is approximately $440 more per year to have UMR do it versus having. However, what I can tell you, there was a much greater financial savings going to UMR in addition to all of the important parts, the customer service, the plan design, and all of that. Also, it's very reasonable and makes sense to have your third-party provider doing that due to their knowledge and connectivity with regard to eligibility for Cobra, etc. So we are recommending hold that with our third-party administrator rather than contracting someone separately for that service. So that's all of the recommendations we have. I do have another issue, but maybe if we could talk about anything. With these items, I could then give you the overview on the paragraph on the bottom of that committee action sheet.
Is there any further questions or comments on these three items? Alderman Mayor?
Maggie, I just stepped in as public comment was already underway. Have those concerns, are they addressed in these plans?
They're not addressed in these, but that is something, and we appreciate the comments and the feedback. We are working to make that better. It was a hassle for our employees to do that. We used to have a come in and did all of the biometric screenings, and then they just let us know who did them. This year we engaged with a company called, Humana, with a product called Go365. Go365 is it's supposed to be a morale booster, right? It's a wellness program, and I know some of you are familiar with it. But it was a hassle for our employees to then healthcare another provider and put it into Go365. We're making accommodations so that will not have to happen next year. We're also going to do a re-kickoff of Go365 in 2022 because we had a pretty passive implementation in 2021 because the city had Go365 in the past, and we're going to hit on both sides of that and that it's improved for next year. But neither of those items are on the agenda for.
Okay, thank you.
Peggy, just curious, will NICE upload biometrics for our employees next year?
We're not sure how that's going to look, but they will be if they see. The thing is employees don't have to do it through NICE, but we pay for NICE on a per employee per month basis, not on a per service basis. So we really want to encourage our employees to use NICE. So we are going to figure out a way to have that happen. I'm not sure if NICE is going to be able to do it, or if we're going to do it, or if our consultant's going to do it, but we're going to figure out a way that the employees don't.
Okay, any further comments, questions? Hearing none, is anybody prepared to make a motion to approve the three above named 2022 employee benefit-related coverages, carriers, and premiums, including health insurance, wellness, health and wellness supplementary programs, and dental insurance, and authorize the Director of Administration to execute the appropriate related contracts and forward such recommendations to the Common Council for their consideration.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
If none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Carol can come back to read these from now on.
So the second item I have under that same topic, under number 5, is the last options. So I'm going to turn it over to USI in a minute, but I just want to maybe set the table a little bit. This is definitely not something favorable, but it was an honest mistake. Last year when we were looking to implement some health insurance changes because we knew the burden was placed pretty high on our employees compared to our comparables. So we were looking to do something different. We have an HSA plan and we stacked an HRA plan on top of it. As we were going through our transition to UMR, our new third-party administrator last week, late Thursday, we found out that the way we stacked them was inappropriate. We found out that the way we stacked them was inappropriate. So under the embedded deductibles and plan workings, we were supposed to have a $2,800 access point, and we implemented a $100 access point. So there was definitely something we need to. Work through and resolve it. The memo you have in front of you is from USI. I'm going to turn it over to Rayanne in a minute, but basically what they did, and again, this came up late in the day on Thursday, so between then and now, we've been trying to work on what that resolution looks like. I'm going to turn it over to her. As soon as it gets explained to this committee, we would also be sending a letter to all of our employees to explain what happened and what's going to be remedied. And we are hoping that we could perhaps get a special meeting mid to late next week, so that once we have everything worked out, we're able to come back to the committee and get an authorization. Over. Ryan?
Okay, thank you. And thank you for indulging me as I attempt to explain this. And I realize that these are challenging concepts and the acronyms are similar letters, so I will be very careful to not use the initials so that we know which accounts we're talking about, because it makes it just, as Peggy mentioned, in 2020 we were looking for a way to minimize the out-of-pocket costs for the employees, particularly those that carried family coverage, because they were looking at substantial out-of-pockets in terms of $9,000 for those that had been medium to heavy utilizers of the health insurance plan. And the city was in a much more favorable to heavy utilizers of the health insurance plan. And the city was in a much more favorable position with regard to health plan utilization than they had been in 2018 when the high deductible health plan was implemented. So we, at that time, as Peggy indicated, recommended, which is done across the industry, a health savings account, which is an IRS account that's ruled by the IRS. It has to go along with a certain type of health plan, with a health reimbursement arrangement underneath that minimum deductible for HSA. It's called stacking. And as I mentioned, with the minimum that we put for the access point per individual, we set it at $1,500. The health savings account rules are that anybody with a family plan, each individual in the family or a combination thereof, has to hit the minimum dollar benefits can be paid, which is what a health reimbursement arrangement is considered. So in other words, the access point for 2021 was set at the wrong level. How did we get here? We implemented a plan that was not fully vetted. United Healthcare is our third party. It's our responsibility to know. The plan was implemented. Employees have been using it. So that is the issue. It is not fully in compliance with health savings account regulation under the IRS code. We shared it with the city as soon as we found this out. And we have been, as Peggy illustrated, working with her and our employer law experts, our HRA administrators, both the one we're currently using as well as others, to make sure that whatever fix we put in place could be adjudicated, and that what we would need to put a proper plan together in order to tell the city what liability would be and how we would attempt to remedy it to make the employees and the city as whole as we possibly could. The underlying health plan is a $3,000, $6,000 deductible, so the health plan as you know it does not have to change. So either for 2022 or currently, Nothing with the underlying health plan. So is everybody sort of with me so far? Okay. The health reimbursement account also doesn't have, we are looking at the possibility for changing it on November 1st moving forward so that we can stop any additional liability, but we're not sure that that's exactly allowed yet. So I'm just saying we're looking at that, but it does not have to change. It will have to change for 2022. So we will be implementing the higher access point of $2,800 reimbursed. So where the real problem lies for 2021 as we look to resolve this issue. So 2022, we have a plan. And we'll talk more about the appropriate plan designs, anything we decide we want to change if, at the special. So 2022, we have a plan. And we'll talk more about the appropriate plan designs, anything we decide we want to change if, at the special meeting. But for right now, it's looking like the health plan remains the same. The HRA access point is changed in order to be in compliance. It's looking like the health plan remains the same. The HRA access point is changed in order to be in compliance. The challenge for 2021 is really the HSA or health savings account dollars and their taxability to both on the employee side. So basically, only the family plans, there are 83 of them. So 83 people have a family plan with the city of Franklin that are on the high deductible affiliated program. So there are 83 families. 45 of those families have received health reimbursement arrangement dollars after they would not have been eligible until they hit 2,800. Either one person in the family or a combination of family members. What that means is for any months we weren't in compliance, HSA contributions were not, and if I, as an employee, were adding additional dollars to my health savings account, those contributions for those months would not be allowed. So for example, if I use myself and my spouse as the city, as two people on the city's health plan, if we hit our maximum out of pocket of plan, if we hit our maximum out of pocket of, I fulfilled completely my $3,000 deductible with deductible eligible expenses in January, I wouldn't have been eligible for an HSA contribution for myself and my family until February 1st. So the month of January is disallowed and it's taxable income. So each person, we're going to have to do an individual calculation to see when their claims hit the appropriate maximum, how many. There's two challenges with this. For individuals that are contributing some amount, but their contribution along with the city's contribution is under the maximum allowed by law, which is $7,200 per calendar year. So if the city's contributing $1,500 on my behalf, just to keep the examples clean, and I'm contributing $1,500, we would take 1/12 of my contribution, 1/12 of the city's contribution for that month of January in the claim example I just used. That would be the taxable income amount. But since I'm only contributing $3,000, there's the potential that I could go back and do something different at the end of the year because I'm under the maximum. So it gets very under the maximum. So it gets very complicated. I'm not necessarily expecting everyone to follow this, but we need to make the appropriate calculations for each individual. When someone is contributing the maximum, they simply will not be allowed to contribute those months. So if I had 6 months before I hit, I would only be eligible for half the family amount, or $3,600. So when we get to the maximum is the challenge, or a bigger challenge in terms of taxable income. For the payrolls that are on or after November 1st, which I believe is November 5th is the first one, we would stop employee and employer contributions to the HRA for those families. We would get the reporting in from both the health contributions and the medical plan so that we know when people's claims hit the allowed amount. We have to do that calculation to determine tax liability. Irrespective of that, we have our folks working on a resolution that makes the city and any employees whole for the tax liability and any potential penalties before we even get to the individual calculations. So just putting out there, we recognize that, like I said, it doesn't matter whose fault it is, it's our responsibility. We recommended it. Whose fault it is, it's our responsibility. We recommended it, we implemented it, it's where we're landing. So we're fully prepared to do this. I understand this is very complicated. It's going to be very difficult to explain to employees. I'm not trying to gloss over this, but once we know, we're obligated ethically and professionally to ask us to stop with liability on both our parts, as well as the employees, and make sure we can make this right and do it as soon as possible. Therefore, if we can turn things back on for the month of December, we would want to be able to do that. But right now, to tell you the total challenge that this would be. So we wanted to bring something to your attention this evening. We're here to answer any questions. And just to let you know that, obviously we apologize that this has happened, but we'll do everything we can to make sure it's calculated and handled appropriately. Everything we can to make sure it's calculated and handled appropriately.
First of all, let me assume that the employee is not going to get hurt by this at all. Not going to lose any money.
They're not going to lose any money in terms of however we choose to handle this, because they choose to handle this because they would get it back as taxable income, and then the taxes are being considered. The challenge is, and people are going to feel this, if I thought I was able to set aside $7,200 on a tax advantage basis, and now for this reason people are going to be upset by that. So it may be a perceived loss, even if it's not an actual financial one.
But had this not happened, they still would have been in this
Correct. Yes.
position.
Correct.
And in the end, so Rand said it one way, I'll say it a different way. The $3,600 that they may have lost the tax advantage of, they basically get the tax advantage back because USI is going to be covering that tax liability and any penalty that would occur. So now instead of $3,600, that's only good for medical purposes occur. So now instead of $3,600, that's only good for medical purposes, they can have $3,600 that can be used for anything. So I'm not saying it's a good or a great thing. I'm just saying if there's some consolation for the employees, they're not going to be negatively affected. It's going to take us some time to explain that.
They're going to be impacted by too happy about it.
Right.
Monetarily, they're not going to be affected.
Correct.
The same thing with the city.
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, nobody likes that, but at least for the employee to know that they're not going to get hit with taxes, extra taxes, unnecessary taxes.
Do we need to have that as part of the action sheet at this point?
We're not ready. We don't have that answer or that resolution fully taken care of. We are going to be asking for a special meeting next week so that we can make sure we get through all of the regulatory and compliance and get that back. I think we have a pretty good handle on it. Rather than ask you to vote on anything tonight, we'd rather have everything figured out and bring it back. We know exactly what's going to happen.
Alderman Hofer, Alderman Marion.
What's the projected timetable to make the employees whole? And to make them whole, they're going to get some kind of a reimbursement. Is that going to be taxable income to them?
Yes. So the time frame will be, as mentioned, if the city stops the contributions, we can request the October HRA review as soon as possible. and then we know what we have to do for the last 2 months. So it may simply be a situation where stopping contributions for the last 2 months is enough for a couple people. Maybe they have to deal with January and February. We don't take contributions for November and December. So there's still a consequence to the fact that they couldn't take those additional dollars as tax advantaged income. It would get paid out in their regular payroll, and then there'd be the additional taxes would be reached the city. So that's kind of how we're looking at it at this point. And we're trying to do that before the end of the plan year so that we don't have to change people's W-2. We don't have to make any kind of adjustments into 2022.
But if you're hit in having to pay tax, if you're hit in having to pay taxes on something because of the way it's structured, and then you reimburse me for the taxes that I paid, but now it shows up as taxable income to me, am I really being made whole?
Well, I think there's
Made whole?
Well, I think there's, at this point, the determination of how it gets back to the individual employee is still a question. So I agree with you. I understand what you're asking. I don't have a good answer for that yet.
Alderman Mayor? Alderman Mayor? Alderman Mayor?
Thank you. So we've kind of covered a few things from a couple different angles here. I'm hearing that the employee will be made whole, but then I'm hearing that we don't have understanding, we don't have clear answers yet on that. And we're talking about taxable ending and an expectation of this plan going forward. If I'm an employee, what's the bottom line here? Am I going to be paying something? Am I going to be made whole? What's going to happen here?
I guess I'll do the worst case scenario. And case scenario is if I'm someone that I don't have a medical claim. I never had a medical claim. That I guess this is the best case scenario, and then we'll do the worst. If I or my family members only have preventive care, so we're getting 100% employee contributions. I never got contributions are fine. I don't have anything that was a challenge, so I'm fine to continue on the way it was. If I'm an employee that met $2,500 in deductible, and I'm the only one in my family that had deductible dollars, $2,500 in deductible, and I'm the only one in my family that had deductible dollars, I got $1,000 back from the HRA, and I got it in October. That means 10 months of their contribution from the HRA, and I got it in October. That means 10 months of their contribution were not eligible. That's probably the worst case scenario at this point.
Do we know numbers of both sides of that?
We don't.
They will be made whole, right? So they're either going to get their tax advantaged money, which means there's no taxes involved and it's going to be in their HSA, or they're going to get their tax or disadvantaged money, and they're going to get the money to pay the taxes and to pay any penalties that may occur. So I think that goes back to answer your question too. Yes, and it's something we have to work out, but nobody can ever know all of our different tax scenarios, right? We could all make the same exact money and we could still have different tax scenarios. That's going to be the hardest part to figure out. And so we've just been, talking about of is that tax. Now, there are some advantages to get the non-tax advantage money, and the advantages is you don't have to put it in your HSA, you can spend it on whatever you want. So the question just becomes, how do we pinpoint that tax? And I will tell you, it's not that piece of it. There's not anybody in this world that could do that for everything.
Who's ultimately responsible for figuring us or them?
So, well, they're going to come up with the solution and what that means as far as reimbursing the city. but we actually have to do the mechanics of it because it's gonna go through the payroll checks. And, our goal is to pay everybody before December 31st, right? Because we want it to be in this tax sheet. That's the goal. So, I mean, long story short, but very honestly, I'm just gonna say it out loud. There's a really good chance that nobody's gonna be audited, etc. And the employees could be, again, please don't take this as a silver lining or anything, but they could actually be enriched by this process. But the goal is for the
To our employees by a letter only? Do we have somebody set up that can answer questions if an employee calls?
We are absolutely going to do that. Dana and I are here all the time. We're going to do that. But when we get this resolution in place, my goal is to set up appointments with employees, just talk through it and answer any questions they have and go fast. As soon as we know what the full story is, they're going to get an opportunity to come in and talk to us. They obviously have an opportunity to ask us questions.
Okay, can we see a copy of that communication before it goes out?
Absolutely.
And
What
then-
we'll do is we'll bring it to the meeting, the next meeting with the resolution.
Okay, and then the next thing is, because this is,
Meeting with the resolution.
okay, and then the next thing is, because this is so intense with the tax situation and things of that nature, would it be advantageous to retain the services of a forensic accountant? And at whose expense?
What's a forensic accountant going to do?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm just not sure there'd be
Look at each individual.
So in order for a
Employees,
forensics accountant to be able to do that, that would have to be every single person that's affected. It would have to be their tax person. Because you would have to know every single thing that happened with that person's family for the year in order to determine the taxes. For example, let's just say it's me. I'm affected. I'm a CPA. I obviously do my own taxes. So when I go to do my taxes, I could do them one way without this issue and one way with them. 99% probably aren't going to do that.
Just a thought.
But certainly, if, you know, and we can make this offer and we can talk to employees, I'm just not sure.
Okay.
I think that's very personal for employees, but certainly if somebody comes to us with a question, let's just say somebody has to get tax advice, I think we need to, and that's part of the resolution that we're talking about. We're going to need to take some action on the city side to handle that.
Okay. Thank you.
I personally think right now,
Okay. Thank you.
we're just really on the bottom level of this. We don't know really any consequences at all. We don't know how, we know there might be 45 people, families involved, but we don't know how they're going to be impacted each one. And I think in the months to come, we'll probably should know more. You know, right now we got a million questions. Maybe in, the months to come, we should have answered. Robert?
Did you say 83 people are potentially?
5 people that have gotten HRA money that are potentially affected, and my guess would be the majority of those people are, because if you had all your medical claims happen in January, you still would not be eligible for the month of. So if my family hit $2,800 in January, I still wouldn't be eligible for that January money, but I would be eligible then for the rest of the year. So it's 1/12 of $1,500 that I would still be affected. So 45 is the number we have. I think it could go a little bit higher because we don't know everything through October. If we cut it off higher, because we don't know everything through October. If we cut it off at the end of October, that would be our breaking.
What would you like from us?
At this point, I don't need anything. I wanted to make you aware of it. We wanted to give you the chance to ask questions. We would be asking for a special meeting if possible. We're looking at maybe October 28th, which is by chance the city could make it. The reason for that is just to give us some extra time to flush out. We may not know all of the effects until December 31st, as the chair mentioned. but we're going to know what our plan is and how to go forward so that our plan is compliant by the time we have, as well as the draft letter that we talked to about. So we'd like to bring that back to you next meeting, and then it would then have to go to, because we're walking, we want to make sure we have it under control by then.
Do you need any action to do the payroll, November? Wanted to not make the contributions, is there any action necessary?
We would wrap that up into next week's request. So anything that we're going to be, will be on our list for next week.
Good news is one more meeting for Carol. Alderman Mayor.
I just want to emphasize and reiterate what Tom mentioned. The communication in this piece is going to be extremely important. And really, it needs to start coming sooner than later because rumors are going to start flying. And some kind of a message out there, even if it's preliminary, that we're working on it and our intent is to make employees whole.
Richard.
I'm not sure if the city has a legal liability here, but they have an ethical liability, correct? I'd like to propose the idea of considering having a waiver. People that are affected have them sign some sort of a waiver once you make them whole. Because as you said, the tax complications become very difficult. Somebody may not know that, but later on they may end up being audited.
And we're going to be, and that's a good idea, we'll make sure we handle that, but that's the thing about this is we're going to pay them every taxability issue and penalty as if every single person charged that. Every single person charged that. I'm not going to tell them what they should or shouldn't do, but they're going to get those funds to pay for that, whether they're on.
But are they going to pay? Let it happen. Ledger return file, and I mean, there's always.
Great idea.
And is the money for this coming out of the contingency funds that we mentioned for the budget?
The money coming for this is coming from USI. So that won't come from any city fund. Of course, our time, Dana and I are going to do whatever we can to help employees. That's
Everybody satisfied so far?
Please, any questions that you have or that come up, give us a shout, and we'll make sure we get everything answered. Next week, if we come to the special meeting and there's still some questions, we'll keep working.
Just one other. This is a challenging thing to grasp on a Monday evening when you weren't anticipating it, and to get a 3-page memo is not ideal. As complicated as this is, and as it's a tedious, difficult process to go through, but the reality is this is an IRS issue. Once we have the reporting, it's not complicated math. It's just a process to go through, and obviously we have to do it for each person to make sure we're doing it right. So obviously we have to do it for each person to make sure we're doing it right. So it's an unfortunate mistake, and we want to make it right. We want to be good vendor partners for the city. That's always our goal, and we wanted to make sure that this was not on the city. And ethically, morally, I get it, but it also is. It's important for us to recognize that we wanted to make it known in a public forum that this is not the city's issue. So
You also besides the fifth.
Absolutely both.
Everyone would like to make a comment. We can't do it under open meetings unless somebody makes a motion.
I'll move to suspend the rules and open it up. Anyone wants to speak?
Second.
All in favor?
Anyone wants to speak?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Just a quick question, because I'm one of the 45 families. My stuff's all invested. So if I hit a 15% return rate or whatever number I had on everything I put in technically against the tax law, how does that affect? Technically against the tax law, How does that affect? Is that being thought of?
I have no idea. I will have to
Okay.
ask. I literally,
That's
I
why I'm
don't,
bringing this up, because
yeah.
once you get to 1,000 threshold, everything, all mine goes into investment. So I just want to make sure that's something that's thought as well. You know, most of the individuals have their stuff in.
Right.
So,
And again,
you know, most of the individuals have their stuff in.
right.
So,
And again, it's nothing past. It's only for this year. So whatever, if I had money in a health savings account for 2020, and I had a life event, so a HIPAA qualifying event, it might be, and I went on the PPO plan. I decided to get off the high deductible health plan at some point in 2021 and go on the PPO plan. Everything that I had put in while I was on a qualified high deductible health plan and a qualified HSA, I still can use. So I don't know about investment income. I'm not a tax expert, so I don't know the answer to that, but we'll make sure we ask.
So I will just give you one tidbit. You are allowed to put taxable into that investment account. Sometimes silly too, right? Because why do it taxable when you can do it tax advantage? But even if you have to take the money and take it out and replace it with money, you don't necessarily do that transaction. We'll get you a formal answer. I'm talking more from an accountant's perspective right
Gotcha.
now than.
thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 6. Peggy?
Item 6 is the item we talked about last month with the sergeants. I did, immediately following this meeting, back in September, I did contact Sergeant Bath, and we met on October 6th. We met and we had a really good conversation, talked about a lot of information. We then circled back, and we both had some things to think about, but basically we circled back. We then circled back, and we both had some things to think about, but basically we circled back with each other today, and I'm just going to read you an email that I sent to him today. Joe, I'm following up on a conversation from a little earlier today, as well as our previous meeting. As you explained when we met on 10/6, there are other items that are more important than the exam request for your group. One of the more important items that you spoke of was some type of sick leave incentive. That particular item is within the subject matter I've been discussing with the Personnel Committee for a number of months. Due to this, I'm suggesting that we hold the request for extended comp time banks for the sergeants for up to 5 months, so that we are better able to analyze the benefits of the different employee groups, sergeants included, and see if we are able to figure something out that is workable for all in regard to the incentive. And does this make sense to you? Thank you for your consideration. His answer was, Peggy, this all makes sense. I've disseminated our agreement to the other sergeants. We are comfortable brought forward. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter, and thank you for the frank and open line of communication. Respectfully, Sergeant Bath. So what we're collectively asking you for is to hold off on that for up until April 1st. I understand that there were some perhaps commitments or potential commitments made in the past about getting at some of the items, and we just simply didn't do it. That's why I wanted to put a time on it. I didn't want to promise keep. So let's just say 5 months go by, we don't figure anything out with the sick leave, etc. The sergeants are more than welcome to come back, but what they expressed to me, what Joe expressed to me, not welcome to come back, but what they expressed to me, what Joe expressed to me, that was really it's not that important an item. They were just feeling like perhaps it was achieved important item. So again, that's why we decided that. The committee is obviously it's at the committee's leisure on what action happens tonight.
I'd move to make that extension.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Before we go further, I'd like to thank you both for coming here. I know that you may have one or two things you would rather be doing tonight, but it really goes a long way, serious, getting this straightened away. And obviously, great for the employees to know that you're not put in a corner here. We appreciate it. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you again. Okay. Item 7, draft. Item 7, draft updated sick leave severance policy.
So on item 7, with everything that came up at the end of last week, we really didn't do too much on this. We do have 2 committee members. Member Brunner will no longer be here in November and beyond, as well as Member Pesh. Member Brunner will no longer be here in November and beyond, as well as Member Pesh. So what we were thinking of is holding this for a month until we get our new members and starting fresh. We have been working a little bit on what that committee is going to look like, that employee-employer committee. We have a couple people identified, ironically, as employee-employer committee. We have a couple people identified, ironically, as Sergeant Bath and I were talking about it. I asked him if one of the surgeons would be on the, he's working through that to see if it would be, but we're really just going to try to get employees, non-represented from all groups. So maybe
Additional members to the Civil Service Subcommittee.
So our Civil Service Subcommittee was Member Brunner, Alderman Barber, and Alderman DeAndrea, and we know that we're down to 2, and in a couple of short weeks we're going to be down to 1. So we are looking for the Personnel Committee to 2 new members would be appropriate at this time. We are still working through the whole civil service issue with our labor attorneys, but in the meantime, we do have a lot going on HR-wise, and we preferred to have 2 different members on. I know Dana likes to do the meetings in between times. If we have a hiring that we're looking at, it would be really good to have a couple members.
I think we've still got our top gun on the job there. I think he can handle it on his own.
I can handle it on my own, but it's so lonely.
But you're used to that. At the top, right?
I wish you'd come along.
It's not a really tiny.
I'll do it
5-minute
until we
meetings.
get something, but we need 1 more.
Thought you needed 3.
Carol can always drive back.
I can drive
I
back.
thought we were talking about.
Drive back.
I can drive
I
back.
thought we were talking about combining this with the committee itself.
We are. We're looking at that on the longer term to see what that looks like, but we have to work through some legal issues. So this would really be, these 2 appointments would be short-term appointments until we get that figured out.
I'll help out.
You do it. Obviously, it is pretty full. All right, thank you. Now we'll get something easy and nice, maybe. Staffing report, Dana?
There's absolutely no changes on here, I don't believe, since the last meeting. Possibility, I don't know if the chief building inspector was listed on here before. We did lose our chief building inspector. He resigned to go elsewhere, and we plan to promote one of our current building inspectors, and we'll then look to fill our building inspector position.
How many inspectors do we have building?
I believe 4. 4 building inspectors, a plumbing inspector, and an electrical inspector.
Dana, are we going to do an exit interview, or have we done an exit interview with the building inspector to see where he's going and what attracted him elsewhere, and et cetera, et cetera?
It was done, and he is actually an architect by trade, which years ago our work was very low, and that's why he came to us. Architect very low, and that's why he came to us. Architect work has picked up with the economy these days, so he's basically going to be self-employed. So
How long was he with us?
3 to 4 years.
Okay.
Really, it's whichever day the committee can make it. On October 27th, there's a technology commission meeting at 6, so I know that's Alderman Mayor. That was the only other meeting I saw on the agenda for that night. And on the 28th, there is an architectural review board. So it would either have to be October 27th at 5 p.m. or October 28th at 6 p.m. or whatever time works best.
You need an extra day.
Next week should be fine. If we have this entire week and the first couple days of next week, okay. So whichever week and the first couple days of next week, okay. So whichever is best for the would be great.
I'm fine with the 28th.
Is 28th okay for everybody?
long as we can have Carol.
Any problems with the 28th?
Anybody that can't make it on the 28th.
Okay, we're gonna have it 28th then. And I know nobody wants to make the next motion, but motion to adjourn. I told you.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
motion made and seconded to